Greetings and welcome back to Room 303 in our Chats with Emily, as we are calling our readings through the poetry of Emily Dickinson. We are in the Johnson edition. We turned out a poem 583, A Toad Can Die of Light, published in the New England Quarterly in 1947. It's another death poem. It is one of those poems that challenges us on multiple levels. Emily will write in this poem, death is the common right. It is, of course, a fascinating question. What is the difference between you and a fly? And obviously Emily's answer is the fly swatter. We'll get to, as well, her informal language here as we start to play the game. Now, to our assumptions. We're assuming that you've been following our stuff at learnstrong.net. Down that left-hand side, Chats with Emily's our playlist. I'm hopeful that you've worked through our set of introductory comments and the preceding 582 poems. We just finished with 582, Inconceivably Solemn. Now, if you've done that reading, you can place a poem like this within the broader context. In many ways, Emily is dancing with the play Hamlet. We've given full lectures at learnstrong.net. You'll remember that we said of Hamlet, Acts 4 and 5, that it is in many ways Hamlet's dance with death. You'll remember the comments about, especially at the conclusion of Act 3, lug the guts, and then of course Act 4, the king is a thing of nothing, how a beggar can go progress through the guts of a beggar. The whole idea for Hamlet is the democratizing of death, as we commented in those lectures there. Now we're also back to poem 422. You'll maybe remember when we played this game, 422. More life went out when he went than ordinary breath, lit with a finer phosphor, requiring in the quench a power of renowned cold, the climate of the grave, a temperature just adequate, so and thrice to live. For some, an ampler zero, a frost more needlekin is necessary to reduce the Ethiop within. Others extinguish easier. A gnat's minutest fan, sufficient to obliterate a tract of citizen, whose peak lift, amply vivid, ignores the solemn news that prototapal exists, or Etna's scarlets choose. Now, we're also back to 383. You'll remember where the Rhine is referenced as wine. Let's enjoy Emily's, I think it's humor here as well, dark humor we might call it. A toad can die of light. Death is the common right of toads and men, of earl and midge. The privilege, why swagger then? The gnat's supremacy is large as thine. Life is a different thing. So, measure wine, naked of flask, naked of cask, bare rind. Which rubies? Mine. Now I love that this poem goes from death to life. I love that Emily begins by pointing out that the most common thing in all of our lives is Beowulf's dragon. That is to say, the cessation of life. Death, right? Death is, notice capitalized, common right. We all experience it. It's the common right of both toads and men. This is so much fun because Emily will play the game as well with playing around with toads. Her referencing to toads is fun. She'll play the game as well when she says, "I'm nobody. Who are you?" And then she'll say in 288. Let's just go there to enjoy this poem one more time. It's such a fun poem, and so many of you guys loved it so much when we did it the first time. She says, "I'm nobody. Who are you? Are you nobody too? Then there's a pair of us. Don't tell, they'll advertise, you know. How dreary to be somebody. How public, like a frog, to tell one's name the livelong June to an admiring bog." We're back to our frog. We're back to our toad. Notice, everything dies. Common right of toads and men, and then she'll say it, of earl and midge, short for midget. In other words, for the greatest people who ever live, and for the nobodies, everybody dies. And then she'll ask it, why swagger then? In other words, what is it that we have to brag about in our life? Because all of our lives end with death. The gnats, can we just say, to continue with our word picture, the fly, the gnat's supremacy is large as thine. Well, notice, by the way, how she speaks directly to you. Very much like the "you're" that we were commenting in the previous 582 poem and study. right? In other words, what do you have that is any more important than a gnat if both you and the gnat end up dead? As we have said, the only difference between you and a fly is you know about fly swatters. But then the second part of the poem, life, dash, is a different thing. Notice thing capitalized, dash. In other words, the question isn't whether you're going to die. Everybody's got to go to the van, as we have said. They were teaching this to us when we were children swinging at the park. Honey, it's time to leave the park and go to the van. I don't want to go to the van. No, honey, you can't swing at the park all night. Everybody's got to go to the van. Death is always waiting. You have not met any 200-year-old people. That is to say, everybody's got to die. But living is a different topic entirely, right? That is to say, everyone dies, but not everyone lives. And she says it this way, life is a different thing. So measure wine. Her use of the word measure, of course, we've commented on it already in earlier poems, and reminds us as well of Whitman's I never measured and never will be measured in Song of Myself 46. So measure wine, consider wine, in other words. Naked of flask, doesn't matter what you put it in. Naked of cask, she repeats herself. Bare Rhine, as in naked bear, right? Rhine. Again, back to 123. Which rubies, mine. The quality of the wine has nothing to do with the container of the wine. In other words, the life that you live determines the quality of your wine. By the way, when we come to poem 990, we will come back to this again, this idea. Not all die early, dying young. Maturity of fate is consummated equally in ages or a night. A hoary boy I've known to drop, whole statured by the side of junior of foursquare. 'Twas act, not period, that died. Now, what are we going to do with a poem like this at 2A? I think, again, the argument is live well. If the van has always been waiting, and it has since the moment of your conception, then it seems that the best argument for life is to live it well, so that the wine of life is well made. At 2B, we have some interesting rural analogies. One scholar's pointed this out. The effect of the informality of a poem like this. It's kind of like going back to 374. You'll maybe remember, I went to heaven. 'Twas a small town, lit with a ruby. We're back to rubies, right? Lathed with down, stiller than the fields at the full dew, beautiful as pictures no man drew. People, like the moth of Michelin frames, duties of Gosmere and Eider names, almost contented I could be among such unique society, the informality. At 3A, we mentioned, of course, 990. I think there's a lot of Dante standing behind a poem like this. Of course, his trip through the underworld and hell. We've given full lectures of the Divine Commedia in entirety at learnstrong.net. But what is it that Dante the Pilgrim learns? We don't go to hell, we go through hell. And the way you live your life determines the kind of heaven or the kind of hell that you get to enjoy. Finally, to own a poem like this at 3B, how do you deal with the democratization of death and the fact that there is one way you and a gnat are actually quite the same? Although I don't know that the gnat can enjoy Emily's poems as well as you. Thank you.